Thank you. Jeffrey Rosen from Lazard. You described earlier the relationship with China that's been developing, an economic relationship. I'm curious how you reconcile that relationship with reports about the treatment by the Chinese of Muslim churches, Muslim mosques, the practice of Islam in China. Whether you're able to use this as the relationship as a means of pressuring the Chinese to perhaps relax in that treatment, and if not, whether you raise the risk of perhaps some of the more radical elements of Islam in Pakistan, acknowledging there's not radical Islams, but there are radical Islamic people who practice Islam who are radical, whether you run the risk of a reaction from them domestically, which could unsettle the country, your country.
Particularly given what the Chinese are doing, with the Uyghurs.
Look, with the Chinese, we have a special relationship, and it's the way China functions. Any of issues like these, we talk to them privately. We don't make public statements because that's how China is. And I again repeat, China has come to a help when we were right at the rock bottom. So I would not publicly talk about it, but just, as someone who has taken over Pakistan 13 months ago, faced the biggest economic crisis, dealing with that. We have a problem in Afghanistan trying to settle that. We are worried about what would happen now with Iran and Saudi Arabia, the United States. That's the other border. So one border Iran, the other Afghanistan, and now with India. I think I've got enough on my plate right now. Wouldn't you say, Richard? What would you do if you were in my position? You'll probably have a heart attack by now.
Unlikely. I would welcome that conversation.
Listen, the only reason I can cope with these pressures is because, when you walk out not a lot of you won't understand cricket, but imagine, you're walking out on a cricket field, there are 90,000 people in the stadium. You walk 70 yards down into the middle of the pitch, and the worry that you can be out first ball and you will have to walk all the way back with 90,000 people. So that takes character. It builds. So you are able to play under pressure once you cope with that, and that's the only way I have coped, and Richard, you would not have been able to. I'm telling you.
Every golfer knows what it's like at the first tee when the crowds are there.
Golf is a piece of cake compared to this.
We could continue that, but I will show uncharacteristic discipline. Sure.
Michelle Caruso-Cabrera, CNBC contributor, following on the conversation about China. Richard asked you very directly about maintaining your sovereignty in the face of so many Chinese loans, and you didn't answer it directly. You've talked about China coming in when you were rock bottom, but are you concerned about the trade-offs that level of investment presents to Pakistan?
Absolutely not. For instance, what would China, how would it impinge on our sovereignty? Maybe they would say, don't have a good relationship with the US. But the Chinese have never, ever interfered in any of our foreign policy, in any of our domestic policy for that matter. I think China sees Pakistan as the CPEC, this economic corridor and the Belt and Road Initiative. They see this as a great opportunity for them. I think China is one country which we can all learn from. Their main concentration has been on trade and wealth creation and lifting the standard of living of their people. What I admire about China the most, in 30 years they have taken 700 million people out of poverty. It's never been done in human history. And when I came, if you ask me what is the one thing I want in Pakistan, lift 100 million Pakistanis out of poverty. This is our main thing. So that's where we have learned a lot from China, how they tackle poverty in these last 30 years. So the answer to the question, there have been no demands by China which restrict our sovereignty.
Are you not put off that China has accomplished what you said, but they've done it at a great price and cost in terms of democracy, human rights, and the rest, not just for Muslim Chinese, but for all Chinese? Are you not put off by that aspect of the cost of their development model?
Well, you know, who am I to comment on China? But the fact is that if any human society can accomplish this, you know, this is humane. This is taking people out of poverty. I mean, I admire that the most. For me, if I had, but I don't have, unfortunately, the Chinese model, and if I could order people around, and I could get people out of poverty. Not just that, the way they've tackled corruption. Unfortunately, I can't do that in Pakistan. 450 ministerial level people in the last 5 years have been put into jail on corruption. I mean, I wish I could do that in my country. But, you know, we have our limitations, but it has to be admired what they've done in terms of taking what China is now. I mean, 30 years ago, you wouldn't believe what they've been able to achieve.
Mary Boyce.
Mary Boyce-Schiller. The attack on the Saudi oil last weekend, if the response were left entirely to you, what would the response be?
You know, Mary, I am and will always be a pacifist. I am anti-war. I do not believe wars solve problems. You go to solve one problem, you give birth to 5 other problems. You go after Al-Qaeda, you create ISIS. I do not believe wars solve problems, unfortunately. I would do everything to resolve this issue through diplomacy. I would be trying my best, because if there is a conflict there, the consequences, I mean, just look at the poorer countries. Do people care about poor countries? Imagine if oil prices go up. And we are struggling finally to sort of try and balance our budget. This will just immediately throw everything for us. And so we already have the war we had, war on terror. 70,000 Pakistanis died. And it's a lesson my government, people of Pakistan have learned, that we will avoid conflict at everything. And we can't afford another conflict going on in our neighborhood.
Yes, ma'am. You've been very patient.
Masuda Sultan, All in Peace, a coalition of Afghans and Americans looking to end the longest war in American history. I wanted to thank you for your comments on Afghanistan and the war. And you've been supportive of U.S. efforts at peace negotiations and indicated your willingness to encourage Trump to continue negotiations. My question is, what steps do you intend to offer to take as the Pakistani Prime Minister to advance the dialogue? For example, you mentioned that you didn't meet the Taliban when the Afghan government requested you not to. So what other steps do you intend to take? And how does the Kashmir issue complicate, or does it the Afghan issue?
What I was planning to do was, this deal was about to be signed. The moment this deal was going to be signed, I would have met the Taliban leaders, and I would have immediately made them sit with the Afghan government. So that was the last thing left. You know, at the moment, the Taliban were only talking to the Americans. And so once they had, the deal was signed, then we would have got them to talk to the Afghan government. I would have tried my best. And I feel that that was the way ahead. We just read the tweet about the talks breaking down. I wish we had been consulted and we would have tried our best. This was always, I mean, the fact that President Trump felt that because of, you know, the terrorist attack, because of that, he had broken off talks. But, you know, when you are fighting and talking at the same time, this was always going to happen. But they have to stay the course. So I will be trying my best to convince President Trump to resume the talks.
To what extent are you using Twitter as a tool of political persuasion and reaching out to your own population or to India's? To what extent is Twitter a tool for you?
I try my best to convey my feelings. I do feel, Richard, I honestly feel, I'm sitting in front of you, I have known India. I have had love and respect from India and fan following because India loves cricket more than any other Pakistani. I'm more worried about India right now than probably even Pakistan, because India is not heading in the right direction. If you see what has happened in India in the last 6 years, it is frightening for some of us. It's not the India I know of Gandhi and Nehru. It is this ideology that has taken over India of Hindu supremacy. And this, whenever such an ideology takes over, there is always something they blame. You have to hate someone to be, supreme and an exclusive Hindu India. This is the ideology that assassinated Gandhi. This is the ideology was banned in India for 3 times. And now, unfortunately, it is running India. And I fear, because I think you can reason, as long as you can reason with people, the 2 nuclear-armed countries need not worry about anything. But unfortunately, with this ideology of racial supremacy, I don't think you can reason, and I'm generally worried. And that's why I'm going to speak. I'm speaking to the heads of state. I've just spoken to Prime Minister Boris Johnson. I will speak to Donald Trump. I will speak to other leaders. I will speak in the UN. I'll try my best that the world must intervene before this goes too far.